Daniel 3 is about to talk about one of the most well known stories in Daniel, besides the lion's den, which is the image of the gold statue in the fiery furnace. So we're just going to jump in, and if you didn't get to see yesterday's, just jump back. Just go back to yesterday's, figure out Daniel 2. Great time. We're working through that. But Daniel 3, here we go. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. Why do they have to say names like that? Okay, so the satraps, that's what I'm calling it. Prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "This is what you are commanded to do. O peoples, nations, and men of every language, as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace," which we know it's about to happen. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sounds of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, O king, that everyone who hears the sounds of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harps, pipes, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They never serve your gods, nor worship the image of gold you have set up." What's really happening in the first 12 verses is Nebuchadnezzar forgot. Like, Nebuchadnezzar forgot that Daniel had come and interpreted his dream and told him this is what the dream means according to God. And it's wild because remember at the end of chapter 2, you see that Nebuchadnezzar falls prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and offered offerings to God. And it's, you don't know the time really, how much time has passed between this, but you know that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are good friends with Daniel. They all went into the palace together because they're the ones that were there pleading with God for God to give Daniel an answer so that they didn't die. So obviously they're at this point of like, what do you mean? I'm not gonna worship your God. Like, I'm already in captivity. I've already have all this, they have all this history with the Father now in the midst of captivity. They've already seen battle. So they're like, what? I don't know why you thought I was going to go worship that, right? But I think it's really interesting because a lot of us could actually see ourselves as Nebuchadnezzar's if we really thought about it, because he forgot what God had done for him. That's a lot of us. I think a lot of times we get on with life and we've walked through hard things and we forget the good things that God has done for us, and we just begin to do our own thing again because it's good, because it's not hard anymore. We're at verse 13. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up?" This is like so funny because you've already seen them choose God in the first 3 chapters, right? And you've already worshipped, like, seen them worship a different God. So I don't know why Nebuchadnezzar kind of thinks that they're just gonna magically change. Like, you put them in places of position and then you're shocked that they're doing the same thing. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense to me. Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Sorry. Yeah. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter." I just like when the Bible gets a little petty. It's one of my favorite parts. We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, that the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I'm sorry, I should not be laughing, but it's actually really funny. And his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet in amazement and asked his advisers, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the furnace, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." Now you remember the God they serve? Okay, let's go. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angels and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or tongue who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. All right. The last half of 3, right, is so good. Low petty, so good. Here's my takeaway from this. They chose God overall again. They said, "I don't know what you think is going to happen here, but I don't know a moment where I'm not going to choose my God, where you thought I would choose you." And in today's context, that looks like, are you going to choose God, or are you going to choose the world? Are you going to choose to worship the Father, to spend time with the Father, to build the relationship with the Father, and stand against anything that comes against the Father? Because that's what Nebuchadnezzar is wanting them to do. He's wanting them to denounce their God, to choose him. And in culture, that looks like getting real selfish and living on your own convictions over the Father. It's wild. And I think what we can take away from 3 is, are we going to have the courage to stand? Are we going to have the courage to go, actually, no, I don't agree with that. Because my Father says this. Because his living word speaks this. And I'm called to live a life that is righteous and holy, and I won't do anything less than that. And I think for a lot of us, that's scary. To live in this life of, we do not need to defend ourselves. That's like a wild place to be too, where you're like, I don't have to defend myself because I know who I'm obeying. There's honor. You have honor in the midst of it, but there are moments in life where you have to take a stand and say, I choose my God over all. But will you choose your God over all? Because their courage brought a miracle. It did. There's like So much I could say, but I look at their lives and I go, I want to see more sons and daughters that are willing to stand for the Father, that are willing to be like David too. Remember when David went and saw Goliath talking bad about God? And everybody was just standing around and he was like, "What are you doing?" Right? And his brothers were like, "Why are you even here?" But really, what David had walked through in the field was David building up a relationship with the Father to get to the place where he's all in. And he's saying, "Don't you dare talk about my God like that." And that's the same with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're going, "No, no, no. I'm not going to worship that because I know the one who has divinely held me, who has kept his hand upon me in captivity. I know the one. So I'm going to stand for him above all else." And I think for a lot of us, it's time for us to stand. You can make your choices and you can do your things, but if the biggest piece of persecution you're walking through is because you love Jesus, we need to redefine persecution because there are people dying for the Father. This is the thing. They were living in a time where they could die at any moment because they were choosing the Father. And we're scared to say we love Jesus. And we're scared to lift our hands in worship. We're scared to tell people about the love we know. I would be scared I'm gonna die. like there is a level of risk that they are living in that has brought tremendous courage, and we need to get to the same place. We need to get to the same place where God means more than anything else. Where just because somebody starts talking bad about you, that's not my persecution. So I'm not liked because I love Jesus. Jesus was hated too in his own town. He literally went to the town he was raised in, and they didn't accept him. Didn't stop him. We need to get to another level. That's all I got. Too good. Freaking good. We're in Daniel 4 tomorrow. It's going to be a good time. I think I'm going to break down Daniel 4. We're probably going to, because there's a lot to unpack. There's like dreams and things like that. We're probably going to do it in like 3 separate days. But Daniel 4 tomorrow. Bring your Bible. We're going to keep going. Also, please leave a comment of the next book you want to study, because then I can start going through it and we can start talking through that too.